Imagine a snowy winter night in Paris, 1852, within a cramped infirmary thick with the scent of antiseptic. A man in his early 40s lies quietly in bed, his breath is shallow, his eyes are sealed, yet his countenance is extraordinarily serene. At his bedside lie no costly funereal trappings, only a few sheets of thick paper embossed with tiny, raised dots. At that very moment, millions across the globe who dwelled in darkness like him remained unaware that this man, with a simple awl in his hand, had pierced the eternal silence on their behalf. His name was Louis Braille. Tonight, by the rhythmic flicker of the hearth, let us step into the true odyssey of his life. He was the lamplighter of the dark world. A genius who lost his sight at the age of 3, only to forge a revolutionary writing system by the age of 15. His life knew no clamor of intrigue, no smoke of the battlefield, there was only the sublime elegance of groping through silence and establishing order within solitude. The story of Louis Braille began in Coupvray, a small village near Paris, suffused with the scent of tanned leather and oak. Louis's father was a diligent harness maker, and young Louis loved nothing more than playing in his father's workshop, mimicking the movements of the craftsman. However, on an afternoon in 1812, fate withdrew its mercy. 3-year-old Louis picked up a sharp awl, attempting to pierce a heavy piece of leather. His hand slipped. Agony instantly engulfed his left eye, and due to the primitive medical knowledge of the time, infection swiftly ravaged his right eye as well. By the age of 5, the world before young Louis had been extinguished, leaving only a boundless, impenetrable mist. You must realize that in the rural society of that era, a blind child was often regarded as a heavy burden. Yet, in Louis Braille's gaze, there was no hollow of despair. Instead, there grew a composure far keener than that of those who could see. He learned to feel the moisture of the earth with his toes and to distinguish the subtle nuances of the village wind chimes with his ears. During that long childhood swathed in shadow, he had already begun to construct a city of logic within his mind. One that did not depend on sight at the age of 10, carrying the blessings of his home, Louis entered the Royal Institute for Blind Youth in Paris. It was a building converted from an old convent, dark, damp, and tinged with the scent of decay. There, Louis first encountered the so-called reading method for the blind of the time. Massive Latin letters formed by bent copper wires embossed onto paper. These books were as cumbersome as boulders. Tracing a single word took minutes, and writing remained an impossibility for the blind. Sitting in the frigid classroom, his fingertips tracing those gargantuan and blurred curves, Louis felt a yearning within him like a suppressed flame. He realized that if one could not write and express themselves as freely as the sighted, the souls of the blind would remain forever imprisoned on an isolated island. One day, a retired captain named Charles Barbier brought his night writing invention, designed for battlefield communication in the dark. It was a code of 12 raised dots. Though abandoned by the military for being too complex, to Louis, it was the very thing he had dreamt of, a code born from the darkness. In that silent library, at the stroke of every midnight, he picked up the very same type of awl that had once blinded him. Within those blood-stained shadows, he set out to rederive the shape of light. During the summer of his 15th year, Louis Braille sequestered himself in the familiar little attic of his home. He stripped away all the cumbersome complexities and simplified the 12 dots into 6. 6 dots, a configuration that a single human fingertip could cover in an instant. This meant that the blind could finally achieve a reading experience as fluid and continuous as that of the sighted. Using his awl, he punctured the thick paper with rapid precision. Every protrusion represented a letter, a punctuation mark, or even a musical note. When he first traced his fingers over the words he had embossed, "I can finally see," tears fell from his sightless eyes. However, the price of innovation is often protracted prejudice. When Louis returned to school to present his invention, the conservative administrators were inexplicably incensed. They believed the blind had no need for their own script and went so far as to forbid students from learning the Braille system. During those years of denial and suppression, Louis displayed the profoundest composure of his character. He did not roar in anger. He simply, quietly, passed his 6 dots to his fellow students in secret. In the midnight dormitories, children hid under their blankets, using their fingertips to feel those magical raised points. It was an extraordinarily peaceful power. As long as there were dots in the hand, there was light in the soul. In his adulthood, Louis Braille remained at the school as a teacher. He grew thinner, his voice becoming mellow and warm, always wearing that same faded blue coat. He taught the children more than just reading. He taught them to play the cello and the pipe organ. He created a system of musical notation for the blind, allowing souls in the dark to find color within melody. Long years of high-intensity labor and the damp environment eventually caused severe pulmonary issues. He began to cough up blood frequently, yet the order within his heart grew ever more luminous. He watched his students, through those 6 dots, enter universities, become lawyers, translators, and independent individuals. He wrote his ultimate summary on self-salvation: "In this world, we do not need pity. We only need a pillar that allows us to converse with the world." This detachment and tenderness, having seen through suffering yet willing to pave the way for those who followed, was the most beautiful composure of his life. Every twilight, he would sit in the school garden, listening to the faint sound of horses' hooves within Paris, feeling the touch of the wind flowing over his fingertips. There he was no longer a disabled teacher, he was simply Louis, a speck of dust who had finally found a home within the rhythm of logic and aesthetics. On January 6, 1852, in an extraordinarily quiet farewell, Louis Braille forever left the colorful world he had never seen. It was not until 2 years after his passing that his Braille system was officially recognized by the French government. A century later, his remains were moved to the Pantheon in Paris. He departed with such peace, as if he had simply finalized a tactile experiment accurate to the last millimeter. He provided the answer to the question from the prologue: was the solitude heavy? In truth, the heaviest burden was not the darkness, but the ultimate loyalty to human dignity that remained untainted even within that dark. Do you feel it now? That sense of peace, as solid and stable as the raised dots on paper, reaching across 2 centuries. The smoke of Napoleon has long since dissipated, the scepters of Louis XVI have gathered dust. Only the 6 dots at Louis Braille's fingertips remain in the deep midnight of history, like a faint yet steady lamp that refuses to be extinguished. This is a power that does not need to roar, the finality of a solitary lamplighter. Tonight, may you drift into sleep accompanied by the tactile sensation of Louis Braille's fingertips, and the steadiness brought by that absolute composure. The world has fallen silent. It is time for you to let go of the day's distractions. Good night.